The wind in the high Cascades carried the scent of pine and snow, clean and sharp enough to cut. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Hayes, call-sign Ghost, had come to these mountains seeking silence. After 15 years as a Navy SEAL, after operations in 12 countries and wounds that had earned him 3 Purple Hearts, he needed the kind of quiet that only the wilderness could provide. His cabin sat at 7,800 feet, accessible only by a rutted Forest Service road that turned impassable from November through April. It was January now. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And the world beyond his porch was a study in white and gray, peaceful and empty, almost empty. Beside him on the worn wooden deck sat Titan, an 85-pound German shepherd with a black and tan coat that gleamed like polished copper in the winter light. The dog's amber eyes scanned the tree line with the focused intensity of a trained operator. Because that's exactly what he was. Titan had been Marcus's partner for 6 years, deployed on 4 continents, trained in explosives detection, high-risk extractions, and tactical assault. The dog had saved Marcus's life twice, once in Kandahar and once in Syria. When Marcus retired 3 months ago, the Navy had allowed him to keep his partner. It was the only request he'd made. "Just you and me now, buddy," Marcus said, his voice rough from disuse. He hadn't spoken to another human being in 2 weeks. No more missions, no more bullets, just mountains and snow. Titan's ear twitched, but the dog didn't look away from the forest. His body language remained relaxed, tail curled loosely, head tilted slightly, as if listening to music only he could hear. Marcus took a sip of black coffee, savoring the bitter heat. The mug was chipped, a souvenir from a dive bar in Virginia Beach, where SEALs gathered after training. Another life, another man. Out here, the past felt distant. The nightmares came less frequently. The hypervigilance that made him check every corner of every temp. The room was fading, replaced by the simple rhythms of chopping wood, melting snow for water, and watching the light change across the valley. He closed his eyes, letting the cold air fill his lungs. For the first time in as long as he could remember, he felt something close to peace. Then Titan stood. The movement was sudden, decisive. The dog's entire body went rigid, ears forward, nose lifted to catch a scent that Marcus's dulled senses couldn't detect. A low rumble started deep in the shepherd's chest, not quite a growl, but a warning. Marcus's hand dropped instinctively to his hip, where his sidearm used to sit. Empty air. He'd left the Glock inside, locked in the gun safe. Another part of the old life he was trying to leave behind. "What is it, boy?" Titan's head turned sharply toward the northwest, tracking something across the sky. Marcus followed his gaze and saw it. A streak of black smoke cutting through the gray clouds, moving fast, descending at a dangerous angle. The p sound reached him a half-second later. Not the roar of a healthy engine, but the grinding, tearing scream of something catastrophically wrong, metal failing, systems dying, an aircraft. Marcus was on his feet before his conscious mind caught up. His body moved with the automaticity of thousands of hours of training, muscle memory overriding retirement. The smoke trail curved downward, disappearing behind the ridgeline about 2 miles north. He didn't see an explosion, didn't hear the impact. The forest swallowed both, leaving only the echo of failing engines and then silence. Titan barked once, sharp and commanding. The dog was already moving toward the steps, looking back at Marcus with an expression that needed no translation. "We have to go." Marcus hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. His mission was over. He'd done his time, paid his dues, earned the right to sit on his porch and let the world burn without him. But old habits died harder than old soldiers. He moved fast. Inside the cabin, he pulled on insulated tactical pants, a heavy fleece, and his weatherproof parka. He strapped on his old chest rig, empty pouches meant for magazines now holding emergency supplies. Trauma kit, water purification tablets, chemical heat packs, paracord. He grabbed the sat phone from its charger, checked the battery, 72%, good enough. The Glock came out of the safe, along with 2 spare magazines. He didn't know what he'd find up there, but the mountains had taught him to prepare for anything. Titan waited by the door, his tactical vest already on. Marcus kept it by the entrance out of habit, the Velcro panels marked with reflective patches that read K9, Unit. The dog's eyes tracked every movement, patient but focused. Marcus knelt and checked the vest's fit, running his hands along Titan's flanks, feeling for any sign of discomfort or injury. The dog was 10 years old now, not young by working dog standards, but still strong, still sharp. "This is probably nothing," Marcus said, more to himself than the dog. Probably just some rich guy in a Cessna who took a wrong turn in the weather. Titan's tail wagged once, a single deliberate sweep that said, "Then let's go find out." They left the cabin at a jog, Marcus's boots crunching through 6 inches of fresh powder. The terrain was steep, unforgiving, the kind that punished mistakes with broken ankles and long, cold nights. But Marcus had trained in worse. Afghanistan's Hindu Kush, the mountains of northern Iraq, the frozen hell of Norway during Arctic warfare training. Titan ranged ahead, nose to the ground, following a scent Marcus couldn't detect. The dog moved with purpose, occasionally stopping to recalibrate before continuing north toward the ridgeline. The climb took 40 minutes. Marcus's lungs burned in the thin air, his legs remembered the weight of a full combat load, even though he carried only 20 pounds of gear. Sweat soaked through his base layer, despite the most aide-apte, 20-degree cold. When they crested the ridge, he saw it. The wreckage was scattered across a steep slope, torn metal glinting dully through the snow. Not a Cessna. The tail section that had sheared off and embedded itself in a stand of pines bore markings that made Marcus's blood run cold. U.S. Navy. He moved closer, scanning the debris field with tactical precision. The aircraft had been a Poseidon Pate, a maritime patrol plane, multi-engine, crew of 9. The fuselage had broken into 3 major sections, each one trailing black scorch marks across the white landscape. No fire. That was good. Fuel must have been nearly spent, or the cold had suppressed ignition. Titan moved through the wreckage with careful steps, nose working overtime. The dog stopped at a twisted section of aluminum, whined once, then began to dig. Marcus ran to him. "Titan, hold!" But the dog didn't hold. He dug faster, snow and debris flying. His paws hit something solid, and he barked urgent, insistent. Marcus dropped to his knees and started clearing snow with his gloved hands. Metal, fabric, and then skin, pale and cold, but unmistakably alive, a hand. He dug faster, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. The hand belonged to an arm, the arm to a body dressed in a Navy flight suit. Marcus cleared snow from the face and felt for a pulse. Weak, thready, but there. The pilot was young, maybe 28, with dark hair matted with blood and ice. The name tape on his chest read LTJ Morrison. His face was bruised, eyes closed, lips tinged blue from hypothermia. "Morrison," Marcus said, his voice sharp with command authority. "Lieutenant, can you hear me?" No response. Marcus ran his hands along the pilot's body, checking for injuries. Left leg bent at a wrong angle, definitely broken. Possible spinal damage from the impact. He couldn't move him, not without risking paralysis. He pulled the trauma kit from his chest rig and went to work. Chemical heat pack activated and tucked inside the flight suit. Emergency blanket wrapped tight. He checked the pilot's airway, cleared frost from around his nose and mouth. Titan stood guard, ears rotating like radar dishes, scanning for threats. Marcus pulled out the sat phone and powered it on. No signal. The mountains blocked everything. He'd have to climb higher, find a clearing. A sound made him freeze. Not from the wreckage, from beyond it. A low mechanical rumble, growing louder. Vehicle engines. His mind shifted instantly into threat assessment mode. The crash had happened maybe 90 minutes ago. No way search and rescue could have responded this fast, not in this terrain, not in this weather. And SAR would come in helicopters, not ground vehicles. So, who was this? Titan growled, low and dangerous. The dog had heard it too. Marcus moved behind a large section of twisted fuselage, pulling Morrison's unconscious form with him as gently as possible. He drew his Glock, chambered around, and waited. 2 trucks appeared through the trees. Black SUVs with illegal modifications, reinforced bumpers, blacked-out windows. They moved slowly, methodically, following the debris trail. Marcus's gut tightened. These weren't good Samaritans. The vehicles stopped 50 yards from his position. 6 men climbed out, dressed in mismatched tactical gear, not military, not law enforcement. Private contractors, maybe, or something worse. They carried rifles, AK variants. One had a suppressed submachine gun. They moved with professional coordination, spreading out, securing the perimeter. The leader was a tall man with a shaved head and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. He barked orders in accented English. Find the crew. Check every section. Command wants proof of termination. Proof of termination. Ice flooded Marcus's veins. These men hadn't come to rescue anyone. They'd come to make sure there were no survivors. One of the contractors moved toward Marcus's position, rifle up, scanning. He was 20 feet away, then 15, then 10. Titan's body coiled like a spring. Marcus's hand touched the dog's shoulder, a silent command. Wait. The contractor took another step. Marcus made the only choice he could. He rose from cover in one fluid motion, Glock extended, center mass on the target. Don't move. The contractor spun, bringing his rifle around. Marcus fired once. The suppressed shot was a sharp crack, lost almost immediately in the mountain wind. The man dropped. Chaos erupted. The other contractors opened fire, rounds chewing through metal and wood. Marcus dropped behind the fuselage, pulling Morrison tighter into cover. Titan, cover! The German shepherd moved like a ghost, circling wide through the trees. Marcus heard shouts of alarm, then a scream as Titan hit one of the flanking contractors. The distinctive sound of a dog's attack bite, the tearing of fabric and flesh, cut through the gunfire. Marcus used the distraction to change position, moving low and fast. He came up behind a section of the aircraft's wing and acquired his next target, another controlled pair of shots. The contractor went down, 4 left. The leader was shouting into a radio, calling for backup. Marcus couldn't let that happen. He moved again, using the terrain and wreckage for cover. Titan had disengaged from his target and circled back, appearing at Marcus's side, teeth bared, ready for the next command. A contractor appeared from behind a tree, rifle sweeping. Marcus dropped him with a headshot at 20 yards, 3 left. The return fire intensified. They'd identified his position, were trying to pin him down. Professional tactics. These weren't amateurs. Titan, flank left, engage. The dog exploded from cover, a black and tan missile of focused aggression. He hit the nearest contractor from behind, 75 pounds of momentum and bite force designed to break bones. The man went down screaming. Marcus used the chaos to advance, moving through the kill zone with the calm precision of a man who'd done this 100 times before. He put 2 rounds into the next target, center mass, watched him fall. 1 left. The leader. The scarred man had retreated to his vehicle, using it for cover. He raised his rifle, and Marcus heard the distinctive thump of a grenade launcher. "Titan, down!" The 40mm grenade hit a tree 20 feet away, the explosion throwing snow and splinters in every direction. Marcus felt the concussion, felt shrapnel ping off his chest rig. His ears rang. His vision swam, but his hand stayed steady. The leader was reloading. Marcus had 3 seconds. He rose, moved laterally to change his angle, and fired 3 shots. The first 2 hit the vehicle's door. The third found flesh. The leader staggered, dropped his weapon, and fell. Silence crashed down like a physical force. Marcus stood in the center of the debris field, weapon raised, scanning for more threats. His breath came in, sharp, controlled bursts. Muscle memory, even now. Titan limped back to him, favoring his front right paw, blood staining the snow beneath him. Not his blood. The dog's eyes were bright, alert, waiting for the next command. Marcus's hands were shaking. The adrenaline dump, the aftermath of violence. He'd thought he was done with this. Thought he'd left it behind in the desert, in the mountains of Afghanistan, in the urban kill houses of Iraq. But here he was. Again. He holstered his weapon and knelt beside Morrison, checking vitals. Still breathing. Still alive. "We're getting you out of here, Lieutenant," Marcus said quietly. "You and whoever else survived this," Titan barked, sharp and insistent, pulling Marcus's attention to another section of wreckage. The dog was digging again, snow flying. Marcus ran to him. More fabric, another flight suit, another body. This one was smaller, younger. A woman, her name tape read LTA, Chen. She was conscious, barely, her eyes unfocused, a deep gash across her forehead. "Help," she whispered. "Please." "I've got you," Marcus said. "How many crew?" 9, she managed. 4 in the cabin, 5 in the cockpit. I'm weapons systems officer." "Anyone else? Alive?" "Don't know." Crash was. She winced, pain flashing across her face. "We were hit, surface-to-air missile. Came out of nowhere." Marcus's mind raced. Shot down over American soil. Contractors sent to eliminate survivors. This wasn't an accident. This was an operation. "Who hit you?" "Don't know." Her eyes started to close. Radar showed nothing until impact. Someone doesn't want us talking. She passed out. Marcus stood, surveying the wreckage with new understanding. This wasn't just a crash site. It was a crime scene, and someone with resources, with reach, had already moved to cover it up. He pulled out the sat phone again, climbed onto a section of the fuselage to gain elevation. 1 bar of signal, barely enough. He dialed. A number he'd memorized a decade ago, never expecting to use it again. It rang 4 times before a voice answered. "Go." "Kodiak, this is Ghost. I need immediate extraction and medical support. I've got survivors from a Navy aircraft that was shot down over the Cascades. Contractor kill team on site, neutralized. This is hot." There was a pause. "Ghost, you're supposed to be retired. Tell that to the 6 bodies I'm standing next to. Are you going to help me or not?" Another pause. "Coordinates?" Marcus read them from his GPS unit. "Extract team wheels up in 20 minutes. ETA to your position 90 minutes. Can you hold?" Marcus looked at Morrison, at Chen, at the wreckage scattered across the mountainside. He looked at Titan, sitting patiently in the snow, watching him with absolute trust. "I can hold," he said. "But Kodiak, whoever did this has reach. They'll send more." "Then make them regret it. Kodiak out." The line went dead. Marcus climbed down and moved back to Morrison and Chen, pulling them together into the best defensive position he could manage. He reloaded his Glock, checked his spare magazines. 12 rounds left. Not enough if another team came. He'd have to make them count. Titan settled beside him, close enough that Marcus could feel the dog's warmth through his gear. The German shepherd's breathing was calm, steady, no fear, no doubt. Just the simple confidence of a warrior who trusted his partner completely. 90 minutes, Marcus said to the dog. Think we can last that long? Titan's tail thumped once against the snow. Marcus smiled, despite everything. Yeah, me too. He pulled out his last MRE, broke it in half, and shared it with Titan. They ate in silence, two old soldiers waiting for the next fight, surrounded by the wreckage of a war they'd thought was over. The mountains watched. The snow fell. And somewhere in the distance, more engines started. The cold bit deeper as the sun began its descent behind the western peaks. Marcus had moved the two injured pilots into the most sheltered section of wreckage he could find, a hollowed-out portion of the fuselage that provided protection from three sides and overhead cover from the elements. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Morrison remained unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. Marcus had splinted his broken leg, using aluminum strips from the aircraft and torn fabric from a parachute pack he'd found scattered in the debris. Chen drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling coordinates and call signs, her mind trapped somewhere between the crash and whatever mission they'd been flying. "Stay with me, Lieutenant," Marcus said, checking her pupils with a small flashlight. Uneven dilation, possible concussion, maybe worse. She needed a hospital, not a makeshift shelter at 8,000 feet. Titan had been ranging in wide circles around their position, his training taking over. Every 15 minutes, the dog would complete a full perimeter check before returning to Marcus, sitting long enough for a quick status report that needed no words, then heading out again. Marcus used the downtime to search the rest of the wreckage. He found 3 more bodies, all dead on impact. A co-pilot with his neck broken, a sensor operator crushed under a section of ceiling, a crew chief whose parachute had failed to deploy. He closed their eyes, took their dog tags, and whispered the same words he'd spoken over too many fallen teammates. "Rest easy, brother. We've got the watch." In the cockpit section, mostly intact but crumpled against a boulder, he found something that made him stop cold. A reinforced case, the kind used for classified materials. It had been locked to the pilot's seat with a steel cable, now severed. The case itself was cracked open, its contents scattered across the twisted metal. Documents, photographs, USB drives. Marcus gathered them carefully, his hands moving with the practiced precision of someone who'd handled intelligence materials before. He didn't read them in detail, but he saw enough. Shipping manifests from ports in Seattle and Vancouver, photographs of cargo containers with serial numbers highlighted, financial records showing wire transfers from numbered accounts in the Cayman Islands to shell companies in Idaho and Montana, and maps. Topographical maps of the Cascade Range with routes marked in red ink, snaking through valleys and Forest Service roads, crossing the Canadian border at unmarked points. Human trafficking routes. Marcus's jaw tightened. The pieces were coming together. The Navy crew hadn't been on a routine patrol. They'd been gathering intelligence on a smuggling operation, something big enough, organized enough, that someone had decided a surface-to-air missile was worth the risk of shooting down a U.S. military aircraft. He stuffed the documents into a waterproof bag from his pack and sealed it. Whatever was here, it was worth killing for, which meant it was worth protecting. Titan's bark cut through his thoughts. Not the sharp warning bark of immediate danger, but the sustained, rhythmic alert that meant incoming movement, still distant. Marcus moved quickly, scrambling up the side of the fuselage for a better vantage point. He pulled out his small pair of binoculars, scanning the tree line. There. 3 vehicles this time, moving slowly up the same logging road the first team had used. Bigger trucks, more men. He counted at least 10 dismounting from the vehicles, all armed, all moving with military precision. They'd sent reinforcements. Marcus slid down and moved to the pilots. "Chen, if you can hear me, I need you to stay quiet and stay down. We've got company." Her eyes fluttered open, fever bright and unfocused. "Who?" "The same people who shot you down. They're coming to finish the job." Fear flickered across her face. But underneath it, Marcus saw something harder. The same steel he'd seen in countless operators over the years. She might be injured, she might be terrified, but she was still a naval officer. "What do you need me to do?" she whispered. Marcus pulled his Glock and pressed it into her hand. "If anyone gets past me and that gun comes up, you put 2 rounds center mass. Understand?" She nodded, her grip strengthening on the weapon. Marcus moved to his defensive position, a slight rise that gave him clear fields of fire in 3 directions. Titan settled beside him, low in the snow, invisible against the white background. The contractors advanced in a loose skirmish line, weapons up, professional. They'd learned from the first team's mistake. They weren't bunching up, weren't giving him easy targets. The leader this time was a woman, mid-40s, with iron-gray hair pulled back tight and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. She held up a fist, and the line stopped. "Marcus Hayes," she called out, her voice carrying clear across the snow. "Former Lieutenant Commander, SEAL Team 3. We know who you are." Marcus didn't respond. Talking was just another way to give away your position. "You're in over your head, Commander. This is bigger than you understand. Walk away now, and we'll let you live. Stay, and you're just another casualty in an already tragic accident." Still, Marcus remained silent. Titan's ears were forward, tracking the woman's voice. "We have 40 more men within 30 minutes of this location," she continued. "Air support on standby. You can't win this. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and you have 2 injured pilots who need immediate medical attention. Let us take them. We'll make sure they get to a hospital." Marcus almost laughed. If he let them take Chen and Morrison, those pilots would disappear before they reached any hospital. Probably dumped in a ravine somewhere, their deaths blamed on the crash. "Last chance, Commander." "Stand down." Marcus raised his rifle, acquiring a sight picture on one of the contractors who'd moved slightly out of position. He didn't fire. Not yet. But the message was clear. The woman sighed. "Your funeral." She gave a hand signal, and the line began advancing again, moving from cover to cover, suppressing fire starting to crack through the air. Rounds punched into the wreckage around Marcus, the distinctive snap of bullets passing too close. Marcus returned fire with controlled precision. 3-round bursts, picking his targets, making each round count. One contractor went down, then another. The line faltered, finding better cover. Titan, right flank. The German Shepherd launched from concealment, covering the distance to the nearest contractor in seconds. The man tried to swing his rifle around, but Titan was faster, hitting him low and hard, jaws clamping on his arm. The scream cut through the gunfire. Marcus used the chaos to reposition, moving to a new firing point. He dropped 2 more contractors before they could adjust to his new fire location. But they were adapting. Smoke grenades began landing around his position, thick gray clouds reducing visibility to nothing. He lost his sight lines, lost his advantage. Movement in the smoke. Marcus fired blind, heard a grunt of pain but couldn't confirm the hit. Then Titan was barking, frantic, a warning Marcus had been trained to recognize instantly. Flanking movement, behind him. He spun, bringing his rifle around. 3 contractors had circled through the smoke, advancing on the injured pilots. Marcus didn't think. He ran, closing the distance, his rifle chattering as he fired. 1 contractor dropped. The second took a round in the shoulder, spinning away. The third raised his weapon, aiming at Chen. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of courage and loyalty. Marcus was too far, too slow, but Titan wasn't. The dog hit the contractor at full speed, a missile of fur and fury. They went down together, rolling in the snow. The contractor's rifle discharged, the round going wild. Marcus reached them a second later, putting 2 rounds into the contractor before he could bring his weapon back around. Titan, off! The dog released immediately, backing away, blood on his muzzle. Not his blood. The smoke was starting to clear. Marcus could see the woman leader, still positioned behind her vehicle, watching the battlefield with calculating eyes. She raised her radio. "Alpha Team, execute Phase 2. Marcus's blood went cold. Phase 2 meant they'd planned for failure, meant they had something else in mind. The sound reached him before he understood what it meant. A low, rhythmic thumping, growing louder. Helicopter. It appeared over the ridgeline, a civilian model painted black, no markings. It swept low over the wreckage, and Marcus saw the door gunner, saw the mounted machine gun, saw exactly how this was going to end. He grabbed Chen, dragged her deeper into the wreckage. "Morrison, wake up!" He slapped the unconscious pilot's face. "Wake up now, Lieutenant." Morrison's eyes snapped open, confused, terrified. "Can you move?" "I think so." "Then move. Now." Marcus half-carried, half-dragged both pilots toward the only cover that might withstand a helicopter's gun run. The cockpit section wedged against the boulder, narrow, cramped, but maybe thick enough. The helicopter made its first pass, the machine gun roaring. Rounds chewed through the thin aluminum of the fuselage, tearing metal apart like paper. Snow and debris exploded around them. Marcus shoved both pilots into the cockpit opening and threw himself on top of them, using his own body as a shield. Titan pressed in beside them, squirming into the impossibly small space. The second pass was worse. The boulder behind them rang like a bell as rounds impacted stone. Something hot grazed Marcus's shoulder, tearing through his parka. He felt blood, warm against his skin. Then the gun fell silent. Marcus risked a glance out. The helicopter was circling, the door gunner reloading. 30 seconds, maybe 40, before the next pass. He looked at Chen, at Morrison, at Titan. They were trapped. No way out. No backup coming in time. His mind raced through options, discarding each one as fast as it formed. They couldn't run, couldn't fight, couldn't hide. Then Titan moved. The dogs squirmed out of their shelter, despite Marcus's grabbed attempt to hold him back. "Titan, no, heel!" But the German shepherd didn't heel. He stood in the open, head high, and barked. Long, loud, carrying across the snow, drawing the helicopter's attention, drawing fire away from the injured pilots. Away from Marcus. "No," Marcus breathed. "No, no, no." He scrambled out of the cockpit, reaching for Titan, but the dog was already running, sprinting across the open ground, the helicopter banking to follow. The machine gun opened up again, rounds chasing Titan across the snow. The dog ran like Marcus had never seen him run before, cutting left, then right, impossible to track, impossible to hit. But Marcus knew it was only a matter of time. He raised his rifle, aiming at the helicopter. Stupid. Useless. A rifle couldn't take down an aircraft, but he had to do something. Had to. The sound that cut through the valley made everyone freeze. Different rotors. Military rotors. Fast and low and coming in hard. 2 Black Hawks crested the ridge, U.S. Army markings clear, door guns already training on the civilian helicopter. A voice boomed across a loudspeaker. "Unidentified aircraft. You are ordered to land immediately. This is U.S. military airspace. Comply or be fired upon." The civilian helicopter banked hard, trying to run. One of the Blackhawks pursued, the other descended rapidly toward Marcus's position. The woman leader on the ground made a decision. She signaled retreat. The remaining contractors scrambled for their vehicles, engines roaring to life, tires spinning in the snow as they fled. The Blackhawk settled into a hover 50 feet above the crash site, rotor wash blasting, snow in every direction. Ropes dropped and figures fast roped down. Not regular army, special operations. Marcus recognized the gear, the movements, the calm efficiency. The first operator to reach him was young, maybe 25, with hard eyes that had seen combat. "Commander Hayes?" "That's me." "Major Anderson sends his regards. Said you never could stay out of trouble." Marcus almost laughed. Anderson. His old team leader from SEAL Team 3. Of course, Kodiak had called him. "I've got 2 injured Navy pilots and classified material from the crash." "Those contractors are being dealt with," the operator interrupted. "We've got Apache gunships tracking the vehicles. They won't make it 10 miles. Right now, we need to get your people out of here." 2 medics rushed past, heading for Morrison and Chen. More operators established a defensive perimeter, weapons out, scanning for threats. Marcus turned, looking for Titan. The German Shepherd sat in the snow 30 yards away, panting, watching the chaos with the calm expression of a dog who knew his job was done. Marcus walked to him, knelt in the snow, wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. "You crazy, beautiful, stupid dog," he whispered. "Don't you ever do that again." Titan licked his face, tail wagging. One of the medics approached. "Commander, you're bleeding." "Let me take a look." "It's nothing." "Sir, you've been shot." Marcus looked down at his shoulder, as if noticing the wound for the first time. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the familiar ache of injuries he'd tried to ignore. "Fine, but check my dog first." The medic smiled. "Already did, sir." "He's good. Tough animal." They loaded Morrison and Chen into the first Blackhawk 4 lines already running, oxygen masks in place. Professional, efficient, exactly what they needed. Marcus climbed into the second helicopter with Titan, settling against the vibrating metal wall as the bird lifted off. Through the open door, he watched the crash site recede, the wreckage getting smaller, the mountain swallowing it whole. The operator with hard eyes sat across from him, shouting over the rotor noise. "Major Anderson wants to see you when we land. Said something about paperwork." Marcus closed his eyes. "I'm retired." "Yeah? Could have fooled me." The helicopter banked, heading south toward civilization, toward answers, toward whatever came next. Titan leaned against Marcus's leg, solid and warm and alive. Below them, the mountains stretched endlessly, white and gray, and keeping their secrets. But Marcus Hayes had pulled 2 truths from those peaks today. First, that some wars never really end. They just pause, waiting for the next fight. And second, that retirement was just a word. Because when people needed help, when lives hung in the balance, old soldiers didn't get to sit on porches and drink coffee in peace. They picked up their rifles, called their dogs, and went back to work, whether they wanted to or not. The Blackhawk touched down at Joint Base Lewis McChord 40 minutes later. The sun had set during the flight, and the base was alive with floodlights and activity. Marcus saw armed MPs stationed around the landing zone, vehicles with blacked-out windows, and men in suits who definitely weren't military. He climbed out stiffly, every muscle protesting, the wound in his shoulder a dull throb that the base medic had temporarily bandaged. Titan jumped down beside him, immediately taking up a position at his left knee. Old habits. A figure approached through the glare of lights. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair cut high and tight. Major Nathan Anderson, older now, wearing an Army uniform with a Special Operations badge and enough ribbons to tell stories Marcus had lived through. "Ghost?" Anderson said, his voice carrying the rough warmth of old friendship. "You look like hell. Feel worse." Marcus accepted the hand Anderson extended, the grip firm and familiar. "Kodiak, I presume?" Call sign stuck. Anderson glanced down at Titan. "Dog still has your back, I see. Always." Anderson's expression sobered. "Walk with me. We need to talk, and walls have ears." They moved away from the landing zone, Titan trailing behind, until they reached a quieter section of the tarmac. Anderson pulled out a pack of cigarettes, offered one. Marcus declined. "Those things will kill you." "So will a lot of things." Anderson lit up, exhaled smoke into the cold night. "Like jumping back into operations when you're supposed to be fishing in Montana or whatever the hell you told everyone. I was in Washington, and I didn't jump. I was pushed." "Tell me everything." Marcus did. He started with the crash, the bodies, finding Morrison and Chen. He described the contractor kill team, the documents he'd recovered, the evidence of trafficking routes. He told Anderson about the woman with gray hair who'd known his name, the helicopter gun run, the coordinated extraction attempt. When he finished, Anderson was quiet for a long moment, smoking, staring at nothing. "This is bigger than I thought," he finally said. "When you called it in, I figured maybe some local criminals trying to loot the crash site, but organized hit teams, surface-to-air missiles? Someone with serious resources wants those pilots dead, and wants whatever they were investigating to stay buried." Marcus pulled the waterproof bag from his pack, handed it over. "Trafficking routes through the Cascades and into Canada. Big operation, well-funded. The Navy stumbled onto something." Anderson opened the bag, leafed through the documents with the speed of someone trained to process intelligence quickly. He stopped at one of the photographs, his jaw tightening. "I know this place." He tapped the image. "This warehouse, it's in Tacoma, owned by a logistics company. They handle shipping for half the port. Legitimate business? On paper. But we've had our eye on them for months. Suspected links to a trafficking network, but we could never prove anything. Every time we got close, evidence disappeared. Witnesses recanted. Whole thing smelled wrong." Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. Someone's protecting them. Someone with reach into law enforcement, maybe higher. That's what I'm afraid of. Anderson sealed the bag again. "I'm sending this straight to DOJ and FBI counterintelligence. Cut out the local channels entirely. If there's a mole, I don't want to give them a chance to bury this again." "What about Morrison and Chen?" "In surgery now. Morrison's leg was a mess, but he'll walk again. Chen has a concussion and some internal bleeding they're monitoring, but the docs think she'll pull through. They're both lucky you found them." "Lucky Titan found them." Marcus looked down at the German shepherd. "I was just along for the ride." Anderson smiled. "Same old ghost. Never taking credit." The smile faded. "But Marcus, you need to understand something. You killed 6 contractors today, shot down a civilian helicopter with Apache gunships. There's going to be questions, congressional oversight, maybe criminal investigations. They were executing Navy personnel. I know that, you know that, but lawyers and politicians? They'll want documented proof, chain of custody, evidence that would stand up in court. It's going to get messy." Marcus had expected this. The military didn't like loose ends, didn't like operations that generated headlines. Even when you were right, even when you saved lives, there was always paperwork, always consequences. "I'll cooperate with any investigation," he said. "But Anderson, those pilots have families. Morrison's kid must be, 3 years old now?" Chen mentioned a sister in San Diego. "They need to know their people are safe." Already done. Casualty assistance officers are with the families now. We classified it as a training accident pending the investigation. Training accident? Marcus's voice hardened. They were shot down by a surface-to-air missile over U.S. soil. That's an act of war. It's an act of something, Anderson agreed. But until we know who pulled the trigger and why, we're keeping this quiet. Last thing we need is panic, or whoever's behind this, going even deeper underground. A vehicle approached, headlights cutting through the darkness. A black SUV with government plates. It stopped, and 3 men in suits climbed out. Federal agents, Marcus guessed. FBI or maybe DOD investigators? Anderson ground out his cigarette. This is your ride. They'll take you to a secure facility, get your statement, run you through medical. Play nice, Ghost. I'm always nice. Sure you are. Anderson extended his hand again. For what it's worth, you did good today. Saved 2 lives, broke open a major investigation. The Navy owes you. Marcus shook his hand. The Navy can pay me by finding whoever shot down that plane and making sure they never do it again. Working on it. The agents approached, credentials out, professional but not unfriendly. Marcus recognized the lead agent, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense air. Commander Hayes? I'm Special Agent Reeves, FBI Counterterrorism Division. We need to ask you some questions about today's events. I'll tell you everything I know. Good. And the dog? Marcus looked down at Titan. He's a material witness. Goes where I go. Agent Reeves almost smiled. Wouldn't dream of separating you two. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm. They drove for 20 minutes, ending at an unmarked building on the far side of the base. Inside was standard government issue, fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, rooms with one-way mirrors. Marcus had been interrogated in worse places, but this wasn't an interrogation. It was a debrief. For 6 hours, Marcus walked them through every detail. Agent Reeves recorded everything, occasionally stopping to clarify a point, or ask for additional information. Other agents came and went, bringing new questions, new photographs to identify. Around midnight, they broke for food. Someone had ordered pizza, surprisingly good pizza from a local place in Tacoma. Marcus ate mechanically, feeding pieces of crust to Titan under the table. Agent Reeves sat across from him, working through her own slice. You know, she said, most retired SEALs try to stay retired. Golf, fishing, maybe security consulting. You've been out 3 months, and you're already in the middle of a federal investigation. It's a gift. More like a curse. She wiped her hands on a napkin. But seriously, Commander, what you did today. We've been investigating this trafficking network for 2 years, dead ends everywhere, and you stumble onto their operation, recover their shipping routes, and neutralize one of their hit teams in an afternoon. I was in the right place at the right time. You were in a combat zone, and you acted like it. Most civilians would have called 911 and hidden. You grabbed a rifle and went hunting. Marcus met her eyes. Those pilots needed help. I gave it. That's all. That's not all. She leaned forward. The documents you recovered? They're a roadmap to one of the largest human trafficking operations we've ever seen. Hundreds of victims, maybe thousands, moved through those routes over the past 3 years. We're talking about entire families stolen from their homes, sold into slavery or forced labor. And the people running this? They're ghosts. No names, no faces, just bank accounts and shell companies. Until now, she agreed. Because one of those contractors you killed had a phone with unencrypted messages. We've already traced 3 accounts, identified 2 middle managers, and we're working on the leadership. This could break the whole operation wide open. Marcus absorbed that. All those lives, all that suffering. And he'd stumbled into the middle of it because he lived in the mountains and heard a plane crash. Or maybe it wasn't stumbling. Maybe it was something else. Purpose. Duty. The reason men like him existed in the first place. "What happens to Morrison and Chen?" he asked. "They're safe. Under guard until we figure out who wanted them dead. Once they're cleared medically, they'll be debriefed, probably assigned to desk duty while this plays out." They were just doing their job. I know. And they almost died for it. Agent Reeves closed her notebook. "We're going to get the people responsible, Commander. I promise you that. Make sure you do." She stood, stretched, glanced at her watch. "It's late. We're setting you up in on-base housing for tonight, officers' quarters. Tomorrow we'll need to go through everything again, cross-reference with intel from other sources. Think you can handle more questions?" "I can handle it." "Good. Because the director wants to meet with you personally. Something about a commendation." Marcus almost laughed. A commendation. He'd left the military to escape medals and ceremonies, to find peace in the mountains. And here he was, right back where he started. They put him in a small but clean apartment, 2 bedrooms, standard military furniture. Someone had left a bag of dog food by the door, along with bowls and a note, for the real hero, Major Anderson. Marcus fed Titan, then stood under a hot shower until the water ran cold. The wound in his shoulder was minor, already stitched and bandaged by the base doctors. He'd had worse, would probably have worse again before this was over. Because it wasn't over. He could feel it. The contractors worked for someone, reported to someone, served an organization that wouldn't go down without a fight, and that organization now knew his name. He climbed into bed, exhausted, but his mind wouldn't shut off. Images kept replaying. The crash site, the contractors, Chen's terrified eyes, the helicopter gun run, Titan running through the snow, drawing fire. Titan. The dog had curled up on the floor beside the bed, close enough to touch. Marcus reached down, ran his hand along the shepherd's head. "You saved my life today," he whispered. "Again. I don't say it enough, but thank you, boy. For everything." Titan's tail thumped twice against the carpet. Marcus closed his eyes, let exhaustion finally pull him under. He dreamed of mountains and snow, of faces he'd known in another life, of battles fought and brothers lost. And somewhere in those dreams, a voice whispered a question he couldn't answer. "Are you done yet? Or are you just getting started?" The morning came cold and bright through the apartment windows. Marcus woke to find Titan sitting beside the bed, staring at him with the patient intensity only dogs could manage. "Yeah, I know. You need to go out." He dressed in borrowed clothes, civilian, since his gear was tagged as evidence. Someone had left a parka 2 sizes too big, and boots that almost fit. Good enough. They walked the perimeter of the base, Titan stopping to investigate every interesting smell with the thoroughness of a trained detection dog. Normal, almost peaceful. The kind of morning that made you forget yesterday had been full of bullets and blood, almost. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, Building 7, 0900. Bring your partner, Anderson. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood outside a nondescript concrete structure on the west side of the base. No signs, no markings, just a number stenciled beside a reinforced door. He knocked. The door opened immediately. Inside was something between a command center and a situation room. Computer terminals lined one wall, maps covered another, and in the center stood a conference table where half a dozen people waited. Anderson was there, along with Agent Reeves and several others Marcus didn't recognize. Military, intelligence, federal law enforcement, and sitting at the head of the table was a woman in her 60s, gray hair, sharp suit, and the kind of presence that said she'd spent decades at the highest levels of power. "Commander Hayes," she said, standing. "I'm Director Martinez, FBI. Thank you for coming." Marcus shook her hand. "Ma'am, please, sit." "You too," she added, nodding at Titan. The dog settled at Marcus's feet with easy confidence. Martinez remained standing, hands clasped behind her back. "Commander, what you stumbled onto yesterday is the tip of something significantly larger. We've been tracking elements of this trafficking network for years, but they've always stayed ahead of us. Now, thanks to your actions, we have evidence that could dismantle the entire operation. But there's a problem." She nodded to Agent Reeves, who clicked a remote. The main screen lit up with photographs. Shipping containers, port facilities, and faces. A dozen faces, professional headshots, and surveillance photos. "These are the people we believe are running the network," Reeves said. "Businessmen, shipping magnates, even a retired federal judge. All legitimate on the surface. All connected through a web of shell companies and offshore accounts. And all protected by someone inside law enforcement." One face made Marcus stop. A woman with iron gray hair and a face carved from granite. "That's her," he said. "That's the woman who led the contractor team yesterday." Martinez and Reeves exchanged glances. "Are you certain?" Martinez asked. "Positive. She knew my name. Called out to me, tried to get me to stand down." Reeves clicked through more images, stopping on a detailed dossier. Victoria Hale, former Army intelligence, discharged 10 years ago under circumstances we're still investigating. Since then, she's worked as a security consultant for various corporations, most with ties to shipping and logistics. She's good at making problems disappear. "She tried to make me disappear," Marcus said. "Didn't work out." "No, it didn't. And that's created a situation." Martinez leaned against the table. "Victoria Hale is connected to people who don't like loose ends. They wanted those Navy pilots dead because of what they discovered. Now they know you're involved. They know you have their documents, that you can identify Hale and her team. Which makes you a threat." Marcus understood where this was going. "They'll come after me." "They will. And probably anyone associated with you. Family, friends. Your old team members." Martinez's expression softened. "I'm sorry to be blunt, Commander, but you've painted a target on your back. Then let them come. That's one option. But there's another." She nodded to Anderson, who stood and moved to the map on the wall. "The Navy pilots were investigating a specific shipment," Anderson said, pointing to a port facility marked in red. "Container ship called the Pacific Star, flagged in Liberia, owned by a shell company in Panama. It left the port of Seattle 4 days ago, supposedly carrying commercial goods to Vancouver. But our intelligence suggests it's actually carrying people. 30 or 40 trafficking victims, maybe more, locked in modified containers." He traced a route north along the coast. "The ship is scheduled to dock in Vancouver tomorrow night. Canadian authorities are aware and ready to intercept, but here's the problem. Someone inside the shipping company knows the heat is on. They're planning to offload the victims at sea, transfer them to smaller boats, and scatter them before the ship ever reaches port." "Where?" Marcus asked. Anderson's finger stopped on a spot along the Washington coast, near the Canadian border. "Here, Strait of Juan de Fuca, international waters. Dark, cold, perfect for disappearing. Our sources say the transfer happens tomorrow at midnight." Martinez spoke again. "We're putting together an interdiction team, Coast Guard, FBI hostage rescue, naval special warfare. Fast boats, helicopters, the full package. But we're short on personnel who have the right experience for this kind of operation." She looked directly at Marcus. "We need someone who knows maritime interdiction, who can handle combat in confined spaces, who won't hesitate when lives are on the line. You need a SEAL. We need you." Commander Hayes. "Not officially, of course. This is off books, need to know only. If it goes wrong, there's no press conference, no medals, no recognition. Just a quiet thank you and back to retirement." Marcus sat back, processing. Part of him wanted to say no, wanted to walk away from the violence and complexity and return to his cabin in the mountains. But another part, the part that had driven him through 2 decades of service, wouldn't let him abandon people in danger. "What about Titan?" he asked. "Does he come? If you think he'll be useful. Though I'm not sure how much dog work there is on a ship." Marcus looked down at Titan. The German shepherd met his gaze with calm, patient eyes. This dog had served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. He'd searched caves and buildings and desert compounds. He'd saved lives, found explosives, protected his team. One more mission wouldn't kill him. Probably. "He comes," Marcus said. "We're a package deal." Martinez smiled. "I thought you might say that. Major Anderson will handle logistics and briefing. You deploy at 1800 hours today. Any questions?" 1,000 questions, but Marcus asked the one that mattered most. "The contractors who attacked me yesterday, are they still operational? Most are dead or in custody. But Hale is in the wind. She went dark right after the extraction failed. We're hunting her, but she's smart. Could be anywhere. Or she could be at that ship transfer," Marcus said. "If this network is as important as you say, she'll want to protect it personally." "That's our assessment too. Which means you'll likely see her again." "Good." The meeting ended. People filed out, leaving. Marcus alone with Anderson and Titan. "You don't have to do this," Anderson said quietly. "You've done enough. More than enough. No one would blame you for walking away." Marcus stood, feeling his shoulder pull where the stitches held. "Those pilots I pulled out of the wreck. They were just doing their job when someone shot them down. The people on that ship? They're innocent, stolen from their families, sold like cargo. If I walk away, I'm saying their lives don't matter. And if you get killed, then I go out doing what I was trained to do. There are worse ways." Anderson shook his head. "Stubborn as ever. Fine. But Marcus, this isn't like old times. You're not 25 anymore. You're not running ops with a full team of shooters backing you up. This is a small unit, limited support, high risk. Story of my life. I'm serious. The moment this goes sideways, you extract. No heroics, no last stands. You get those people off that ship, and you get out. Understood?" Marcus extended his hand. "Understood." They shook, the grip lasting a moment longer than necessary. Brothers in arms, separated by time but connected by shared blood and shared missions. 1800 hours. Anderson repeated, "Don't be late." Marcus left Building 7 with Titan at his side, the winter sun bright and cold overhead. He had 8 hours to prepare. 8 hours to get his head right, to remember training that was supposed to be in his past. But as he walked across the base, feeling the familiar weight of purpose settling on his shoulders, Marcus realized something. The past never stayed in the past. Not really. It just waited in the mountains, in the snow, in the wreckage of crashed planes, and the eyes of people who needed help. And when it called, men like Marcus Hayes answered, whether they were retired or not. The briefing room at 1800 hours was packed with operators. Marcus recognized the type, if not the faces. Hard men and women with the calm, competence of people who'd seen combat and survived. Coast Guard Special Operations, FBI Hostage Rescue Team, and sitting in the front row, a face Marcus did recognize. "Bulldog," Marcus said, surprised. "Thought you were teaching at Coronado." Lieutenant Jake Bulldog Morrison grinned and stood to shake hands. Former SEAL Team 5, now an instructor at Basic Underwater Demolition, SEAL training. Built like a tank, with a scar running through his left eyebrow from a grenade fragment in Ramadi. Was teaching. Then Anderson called, said an old friend needed backup for something crazy. Couldn't resist. This is crazy, all right. Good. Hate boring. Bulldog noticed Titan. That's the dog everyone's talking about? The one who took down half a contractor team? That's him. Bulldog crouched, offering his hand for Titan to sniff. The German shepherd obliged, tail wagging slightly. Beautiful animal. Smart, too. I can see it in his eyes. The room quieted as Major Anderson entered. With Agent Reeves and a Coast Guard officer Marcus didn't know. They moved to the front, and Anderson clicked on the projector. A satellite image appeared. Dark water, a large cargo ship, and several smaller boats nearby. Listen up, Anderson said. We're wheels up in 90 minutes. Here's what we know. The Pacific Star is currently holding position in international waters 20 nautical miles off the Washington coast. Intelligence indicates they're waiting for darkness to conduct the transfer. 30 to 40 trafficking victims will be moved from the cargo containers to smaller fishing vessels, which will then disperse in different directions. Some to Canada, some back to the U.S., all to be sold or exploited. He clicked to the next image. The cargo containers modified with ventilation holes and basic amenities. Cages disguised as shipping equipment. Our mission is simple. Intercept before the transfer completes. Secure the victims. Apprehend anyone involved in the operation. Rules of engagement are flexible. The FBI has authorized deadly force if necessary to protect innocent lives or our team. Agent Reeves spoke next. We expect resistance. Armed guards, possibly ex-military, like the contractors from yesterday. Intelligence suggests Victoria Hale may be present, overseeing the operation. She's dangerous, and she's motivated. Don't underestimate her. The Coast Guard officer took over. Approach will be by RHIBs, rigid-hull inflatable boats launched from the cutter Monroe, standing by 20 miles south. 2 teams, 4 operators each, plus Commander Hayes and his K-9 partner as a floating asset. Once we're aboard, Coast Guard sharpshooters will provide overwatch from the Monroe's helicopter. Bulldog leaned close to Marcus. Floating asset? That's a new one. Means I go wherever things go wrong. So, everywhere. The briefing continued for another 30 minutes, covering communications protocols, extraction procedures, medical support, and rules for handling the victims. Many would be traumatized, possibly injured, definitely terrified. The operators needed to move fast but also project calm, reassurance. When Anderson finished, he looked directly at Marcus. Commander Hayes, anything to add? Marcus stood, moving to the front with Titan at his side. He looked at the assembled operators, seeing his younger self reflected in their faces. Most of you don't know me, he said. I'm retired, here because Anderson called in a favor. But I've been doing this kind of work for 20 years. Ship takedowns, hostage rescues, counterterrorism. And I've learned something. The mission always matters less than the people you're trying to save. He pointed to the image of the modified containers. Those aren't statistics. They're human beings. Kids, probably. Women. Men who thought they were coming to America for a better life and ended up in hell. When we board that ship, remember that. Every second we waste, every hesitation, every mistake could cost them everything. Silence in the room, attention absolute. One more thing, Marcus continued. The people running this operation, they've already shown they're willing to kill. They shot down a Navy aircraft. They sent hit teams after survivors. They will fight back, and they won't quit. So when the bullets start flying, you don't quit either. You push through, you complete the mission, and you bring everyone home. Clear? A chorus of clear echoed back. Anderson nodded approval. Gear up. We leave in 1 hour. The next 60 minutes were a blur of preparation. Marcus drew equipment from the armory. Tactical vest, helmet, night vision, suppressed HK 416 rifle, sidearm, flashbangs, breaching charges. All the tools of his old trade, familiar as breathing. He fitted Titan with his working vest, checking each strap, ensuring nothing would chafe or restrict movement. The dog stood patient through the process, knowing what was coming. Bulldog appeared beside them, already geared up. Like old times, Ghost. Better times. Truth. Bulldog's expression grew serious. This goes sideways. You watch my 6, I'll watch yours? Always. They loaded into military trucks for the short drive to the naval dock, where the Coast Guard cutter waited. The Monroe was a Legend-class cutter, 350 feet of steel and determination, its white hull gleaming under floodlights. Marcus climbed aboard with Titan, feeling the ship's subtle motion beneath his boots. The sea. He'd spent years training in the water, knew its dangers and its beauty. Tonight, it would be their battlefield. The RHIBs were already prepared, resting in their davits, fast, maneuverable, capable of handling rough seas. Each boat carried 4 operators, plus a Coast Guard coxswain. Marcus would be in the lead boat with Bulldog and 2 FBI agents. As they waited for the final clearance, Marcus found a quiet corner and pulled out his phone. He thought about calling someone, leaving a message, just in case. But who? His parents were gone. His brother lived in Texas, estranged over some argument Marcus couldn't even remember. There was no girlfriend, no wife, no kids, just Titan. He looked down at the German shepherd, and the dog looked back with eyes that held more understanding than most humans could manage. "You're all I've got, buddy," Marcus said softly. "And I'm all you've got, so let's make sure we both come back from this." Titan's tail wagged once. "All teams, prepare to launch." The announcement came over the ship's PA system. The Monroe's engines rumbled to life, churning through the dark water toward their target. On deck, operators performed final checks, adjusted gear, reviewed hand signals. Marcus chambered a round in his rifle, felt the familiar weight settle into his shoulder. Muscle memory. All of this was muscle memory. The violence, the tactics, the cold calculation of how to kill people who needed killing. He'd thought retirement would change him, would let him be someone new. But standing here, armed and ready, he realized the truth. You could leave the teams, you could turn in your trident and walk away from the life, but the life never quite left you. Anderson appeared, his own gear on, weapon ready. 5 minutes, Ghost. You ready? Marcus looked at Titan, at Bulldog, at the dark water stretching toward the horizon. "Yeah," he said. "We're ready." The RHIBs launched at 2300 hours under a moonless sky. The water was rough, waves breaking over the bows, salt spray stinging exposed skin. Marcus held tight to the safety line. Titan pressed between his legs, the dog's body warm against the cold. The Pacific Star appeared as a dark mass against darker water, lit only by running lights and the occasional deck lamp, massive, silent, waiting. Their approach was from downwind, engines throttled low to minimize noise. The Coast Guard helicopters circled high above, thermal cameras tracking heat signatures on deck. 4 tangos visible, the pilot's voice crackled in Marcus's earpiece. 3 forward, 1 aft. All appear armed. No movement from the containers yet. Anderson's voice came next. "All teams, weapons tight, until we confirm hostiles. These could be legitimate crew. Don't fire unless fired upon." Marcus doubted any of the crew were legitimate. Anyone working this ship knew what cargo they carried, but he appreciated Anderson's caution. Paperwork from shooting innocent sailors was worse than paperwork from letting bad guys escape. The RHIBs split, one heading for the port side, one for starboard. Marcus's boat angled toward a rope ladder hanging from the starboard railing. Someone had left it down, either careless or expecting visitors. 20 yards, 15, 10. The boat bumped against the hull, and Bulldog was first up, moving with the speed and silence of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Marcus followed, Titan tucked. Under one arm, climbing one-handed, the rifle slung across his back. He rolled over the railing and onto the deck, immediately taking a knee, weapon up, scanning. Empty. Just stacked containers and shadows. The rest of the team followed. 8 operators, now on deck, spreading out in practiced formation. No alarms, no shouts. The ship seemed almost abandoned. Too quiet. Team 2 in position, a voice whispered over the radio. The port side team had boarded successfully. "Roger, hold for my mark," Anderson replied. They moved forward, using containers for cover. Titan walked beside Marcus, nose working, searching for scents that didn't belong. The dog stopped suddenly, head turning toward a container marked with the number 847. Marcus keyed his radio. "We've got something." Container 847. Bulldog moved to the container's door, checking the lock. Sealed, but there's ventilation holes. He pressed his ear to the metal. "I hear breathing." "Multiple people." "Open it," Anderson ordered. Bulldog pulled bolt cutters from his pack, snapped the lock, and wrenched the door open. The smell hit first. Unwashed bodies. Fear. Desperation. Then faces appeared in the darkness, blinking against the sudden light. Children, women, a few men, all huddled together, chains rattling as they moved. One of the FBI agents stepped forward, hands raised, speaking in Spanish. "We're here to help. You're safe now. We're taking you off this ship." No one moved. They'd been lied to before, promised safety before. Why should they believe now? Then a little girl, maybe 6 years old, stepped forward. She looked at Marcus, at Titan, and smiled. "Perro," she whispered. "Dog." Marcus knelt, bringing Titan to her level. The shepherd's tail wagged, his expression gentle. The girl reached out, touched his fur, and something in her face relaxed. "That's right," Marcus said softly. "He's a good dog, and we're good people. We're taking you home." More victims emerged from the container. 32 total, all showing signs of malnutrition and abuse. The medics would have their hands full. But this was only one container. "Team 2, we've got victims in 847, Anderson reported. "Search pattern, find the others." They spread out, checking containers systematically. 922 held 18 more victims. 1,034 held 12. Each discovery was both a victory and a tragedy, proof of the operation's scale and horror. Marcus was checking container 1,156 when Titan's demeanor changed. The dog's ears flattened, a low growl building in his chest. "Warning," Marcus spun, weapon up, scanning. Nothing. Then the deck exploded with gunfire. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness from 3 directions. Rounds pinged off containers, shattered equipment, forced the operators to dive for cover. "Contact! Multiple shooters!" Marcus returned fire, 3-round bursts toward the closest muzzle flash. Someone screamed. The flash went dark. More gunfire from above. The ship's superstructure, multiple levels, perfect sniper positions. "Overwatch, we need suppression on the bridge," Anderson shouted. The Coast Guard helicopter banked hard, its door gunner opening up with a mounted machine gun. Tracers cut through the night, raking the superstructure, buying the operators precious seconds. Marcus ran, Titan at his side, reaching one of the FBI agents who'd been hit. The man was down, clutching his leg, blood spreading. "I'm good," he gasped. "Just grazed. Keep moving." A figure appeared from behind a container. Tactical gear, rifle up, aiming at the wounded agent. Marcus fired twice. Center mass. The figure dropped. Bulldog appeared on Marcus's left. "Where the hell did they come from?" "Hidden on board. waiting for us. More operators poured onto the deck from the RHIBs, reinforcements engaging the ambushers. The fight was chaos, a close-quarters nightmare of confused angles and friendly fire risks. Then Marcus saw her. Victoria Hale, standing on the bridge wing, directing her men with hand signals. She spotted Marcus at the same moment, their eyes meeting across the battlefield. She raised a radio. All teams fall back to extraction point. Burn the evidence. Burn the evidence meant the victims. They were going to kill everyone in those containers and sink the ship. No, Marcus breathed. He keyed his radio. Anderson, they're going to execute the victims and scuttle the ship. We need to move now. Belay that, a new voice cut in, cold, female. Victoria Hale had hijacked their frequency. Stand down, Commander Hayes. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Let us leave, and everyone walks away. Marcus didn't bother responding. He ran toward the nearest container where he'd heard movement inside, Titan sprinting ahead. An explosion rocked the ship. Port side, below the waterline. They'd already started scuttling. The deck tilted, the Pacific Star beginning its death roll. Containers shifted, metal groaning. Marcus reached 922, wrenched the door open, shouted to the terrified victims inside. Out, now! Move to the starboard rail! They ran, stumbling, supporting each other. Marcus and Bulldog shepherded them toward the RHIBs, which were already taking on passengers. Another explosion. The ship lurched harder. All teams, abandon ship. Anderson ordered. Prioritize the victims. Marcus turned back, scanning for anyone left behind. He saw an operator dragging a wounded contractor toward the rail. Saw FBI agents loading children into the boats. Saw the Coast Guard helicopter hovering close, a rescue swimmer fast roping down. But one container was still sealed. 1,287. In his peripheral vision, Marcus had seen someone running toward it before the explosion started. He sprinted across the tilting deck, Titan struggling to keep pace on the angled surface. The container's door was locked, but Marcus could hear screaming inside. Women's voices, children crying. He fired his rifle into the lock, the steel breaking. He wrenched the completing. Door open. 10 people, maybe 12, all pressed against the far wall, terror in their eyes. Go! Marcus shouted, gesturing toward the rail. RHIBs, boats, go! They ran, and Marcus turned to follow. Victoria Hale blocked his path. She stood 20 feet away, pistol raised, her iron-gray hair stark against the darkness. Her face was calm, almost sad. It didn't have to be this way. She said, You're right. You could have surrendered. And face what? Life in prison? I don't think so. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Titan launched before Marcus could move. 85 pounds of German Shepherd hit Hale at chest height, driving her backward, the pistol flying from her hand. They struggled, Hale trying to reach a knife at her belt, Titan's jaws clamping on her arm. Marcus ran forward, kicked the knife away, and slammed Hale face first into the deck. Titan, off! The dog released, stepping back, blood on his muzzle again. Marcus zip-tied Hale's wrists, hauled her upright. You're done. She laughed, a harsh sound. You think this ends with me? The network goes deeper than you can imagine. People you trust, people in power. This is just the beginning. The ship groaned, tilting further. Water was pouring in, the Pacific Star dying fast. Marcus dragged Hale toward the rail. The RHIBs were full, pulling away, but one boat waited, Bulldog at the helm, waving frantically. Come on! Marcus threw Hale into the boat, grabbed Titan, and jumped. He hit the water hard, the cold shocking his system, but strong hands pulled him in. Bulldog gunned the engine, the RHIB racing away from the sinking ship. Behind them, the Pacific Star's bow lifted from the water, containers sliding, breaking loose, crashing into the sea. In 2 minutes, she was gone, slipping beneath the dark water with barely a sound. But her cargo was safe. 62 victims, pulled from hell, given a second chance. Marcus sat in the bottom of the boat, arms around Titan, watching, the spot where the ship had been. His hands shook, his shoulders screamed where he'd reopened the wound. He was exhausted, wrung out, operating on fumes. But they'd done it. Ghost. Bulldog's hand on his shoulder. "You good?" Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "That's the craziest damn thing I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot." The Monroe appeared, floodlights blazing, her crew already preparing to receive survivors. Medics waited on deck. Blankets, hot food, safety. Victoria Hale sat at the front of the RHIB, silent now, her earlier bravado gone. She knew what came next. Prison, trials, life behind bars. Her network might go deeper, might include powerful people, but she'd be the one to pay first. As the RHIB pulled alongside the Monroe, Anderson appeared at the rail. He looked down at Marcus, at Titan, and smiled. "Hell of a night's work, Ghost." "Just another day in paradise," Marcus replied. They transferred the victims first, gentle hands helping them aboard, wrapping them in warmth and safety. Then the operators. Then, finally, Marcus, climbing the ladder one more time, Titan tucked under his arm one more time. On deck, he set the dog down and just stood there, feeling the steady deck beneath his boots, breathing air that didn't smell like gunpowder and fear. A Coast Guard corpsman approached. "Sir, you're bleeding again. We need to look at that shoulder." "In a minute." "Sir," I said in a minute. He walked to the rail and looked out at the dark water. Somewhere beneath those waves, the Pacific Star rested on the bottom, a tomb of secrets and suffering. But the people who'd been trapped inside were free. The network that had stolen them was broken. And men like Victoria Hale would face justice. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough to balance the scales, to undo the damage, to erase the trauma. But it was something. Titan pressed against his leg, and Marcus reached down, scratched behind the dog's ears. "We did good. Today, buddy. Real good." The German shepherd looked up at him with eyes that held no doubt, no regret, just the simple certainty of a job well done. And in that moment, standing on the deck of a Coast Guard cutter in the middle of a cold, dark sea, Marcus Hayes felt something he hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Maybe retirement wasn't about stopping. Maybe it was about choosing which battles to fight, which calls to answer, which lives to save. Maybe it was about finding a new way to serve. Behind him, Anderson appeared again. "Director Martinez wants to debrief you tomorrow. Probably offer you a job." "I'm retired." "So you keep saying." "But Ghost, you're the worst retired person I've ever met." Marcus almost smiled. "Yeah, I'm working on that. Work faster. World needs people like you. People who don't quit when things get hard." Anderson left, and Marcus stayed at the rail, Titan beside him, watching the stars appear as clouds broke overhead. The corpsman returned. "Sir, please." The shoulder. "All right. Come on, Titan. Let's get patched up." They went below, into the warmth and light, leaving the dark water behind. But Marcus knew the darkness would call again. It always did. And when it did, he'd answer. Because that's what men like him did. What men like him had always done, not because they wanted to, not because they sought glory or recognition, but because someone had to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Someone had to say no to evil, to fight when others ran, to carry the weight so others didn't have to. That was the mission, the only mission that really mattered, and it never ever ended. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood on the porch of his cabin in the Cascades, coffee in hand, watching the morning sun paint the mountains gold. The snow had started to melt, revealing the green beneath, spring arriving slowly but inevitably. Titan lay at his feet, chin on his paws, eyes half closed in contentment. The dog's wounds had healed. So had Marcus's. Physically, at least. A truck appeared on the logging road, climbing slowly. Marcus recognized it immediately. Government plates. Black paint. The kind of vehicle that brought news you didn't want but needed. Major Anderson climbed out, dressed in civilian clothes, looking like he'd driven through the night. "Coffee's hot?" Marcus called. "You look like you need it." Anderson climbed the steps, accepted the mug, drank half in one gulp. "Damn. That's good." They stood in silence for a while, watching the light change, listening to the birds wake. "Morrison and Chen are going to be fine," Anderson finally said. "Both back on flight status. Chen's already flying patrols again." "Good. The trafficking network is broken. 43 arrests so far, including 2 congressmen and a federal prosecutor. Victoria Hale is cooperating, naming names. It's going to be a scandal for years. Also good, and the victims we pulled off that ship? 62 people, all placed with families or social services. Safe, starting over. Because of what you did." Marcus said nothing. What was there to say? Anderson pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is from Director Martinez. Job offer. Consultant position with FBI counterterrorism. Your own team, your own missions. Carte blanche to go after the worst of the worst. Salaries ridiculous. Benefits even better." He held out the envelope. Marcus didn't take it. "I'm retired, Kodiak. You're bored. I'm healing. You're wasting your skills sitting up here alone." Marcus looked down at Titan. The dog was watching him, tail thumping slowly against the porch. "What do you think, boy? Should I take the job?" Titan's tail wagged faster. "Traitor," Marcus muttered. Anderson smiled. "Think about it. You don't have to decide now, but Marcus, the world's full of people who need help. People like those pilots, like those trafficking victims. And there aren't enough people like you to go around." He set the envelope on the porch railing and turned to leave. "Anderson?" Marcus called. "Yeah? Thanks. For everything. For calling me in. For trusting me. You earned that trust a long time ago, Ghost. What you did these past weeks just reminded me why." Anderson climbed into his truck, started the engine. "Call me when you decide. Or don't. But either way, stay dangerous." The truck disappeared down the mountain, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and his dog. He picked up the envelope, felt its weight. Inside was a future, a purpose, a return to the life he'd left behind. But it was also a choice. He could stay here, in the peace and quiet he'd earned. He could live out his days watching mountains and seasons change, bothering no one, being bothered by nothing. Or he could go back. Back to the violence and chaos and impossible missions. Back to saving people who'd never know his name, fighting wars that would never end. Titan stood, stretched and walked, to the edge of the porch. He looked back at Marcus, tail wagging, as if to say, "Well, what are we doing today?" Marcus laughed. He couldn't help it. Even after everything, all the pain and fear and blood, he could still laugh. "You know what, buddy? Let's take a walk, clear our heads. Think about this." They left the porch, heading up into the mountains, following old trails Marcus had memorized over months of solitude. Titan ranged ahead, exploring, living in the moment the way only dogs could. And as they climbed higher, as the cabin disappeared behind them and the world opened up into endless sky and stone, Marcus felt the decision crystallizing. He couldn't sit still. Couldn't ignore the calls for help. Couldn't let people suffer when he had the skills to stop it. He was a soldier. Always had been. Always would be. Retirement was just a word. But service? Service was forever. He looked up at the mountains, at the pure blue sky, and made his choice. When he got back to the cabin, he'd call Anderson. One more mission, one more fight. And after that? Well, they'd see. Because the thing about men like Marcus Hayes was simple. They didn't quit until the war was over. And the war was never over. Not really. There were always more people to save, more evil to fight, more battles to win. And as long as that was true, as long as there were innocents in danger and bad men who needed stopping, Marcus would be there, weapon in hand, dog at his side, ready to do what needed doing, not for glory, not for recognition, not even for thanks, but because it was right. And in the end, that was the only reason that mattered. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments, what was your favorite moment? Was it Titan's loyalty, Marcus's courage, or the moment justice was served? We read every comment. God bless, and see you in the next story.